What is up, everybody? I am Kevin Iole. Thank you for joining me. I want to talk a little bit today about Alex Pereira, the UFC's light heavyweight champion, and his social media, and if he's not biting off a little more than he can chew at this point in time. Pereira, of course, doesn't need any advice from me. He has done quite well, thank you, as a combat sports athlete, and particularly in his run as a UFC champion. I mean, he is not 3 years into his UFC reign. He will defend his championship at UFC 307 on October 5th in Salt Lake City, Utah, against Khalil Rountree Jr. And he is already in the history books. I mean, in his less than 3 years in the UFC, he has wins over the following former UFC champions: two over Jiri Prochazka, one over Jamahal Hill, one over Jan Blachowicz, one over Israel Adesanya, and another one over Sean Strickland. It is just remarkable. There are some guys who never fight that many title fights, a lot of guys who never fight that many title fights, and he has wins over basically the greatest light heavyweights and middleweights active in the world today, with the exception of one, and we're going to get to that in just a second. So Pereira will defend, as I mentioned, against Khalil Rountree Jr. at the Delta Center in Salt Lake City, Utah, on October 5th. A lot of controversy surrounding that fight because he chose, or he was given, the UFC gave him. He didn't choose the opponent. He fought Rountree, who was ranked number 8 at the time he was given the fight, and he didn't fight Magomed Ankalaev, which was the fight that kind of made sense after UFC 300 if Poatan didn't go up to heavyweight, which he had talked about doing. Ankalaev was sitting there and was the one guy in the top 3 that he had not fought. The UFC instead made a fight for Ankalaev at UFC 309 in New York on November 16th. He is going to fight Alexander Rakic at Madison Square Garden. I would assume the winner of that fight then will go forward and fight for the light heavyweight championship sometime in 2025, regardless of who holds the belt. That would have to make sense that the Rakic Ankalaev winner would get that title shot coming out of that fight. But Pereira put a post on Instagram today, and he said he is going to go back to middleweight to fight Dricus du Plessis, or that's what he wants to do, win or lose against Khalil Rountree Jr. Now, Khalil Rountree Jr. is going to be a huge underdog, and Rountree has kind of made the media rounds, and he said, hey, I have never shot a takedown in my life. I'm going to stand there toe-to-toe and slug it out with Alex Pereira. And Rountree, I have immense respect for, and I think he's being vastly overlooked by a lot of fans in this fight. This guy is a fun fighter, and he can fight. But I don't know that bragging about I've never shot a takedown, inferring that you're not going to shoot a takedown against Alex Pereira, is the right move. Pereira is an unbelievable knockout puncher, a great finisher. He knows how to get the job done. And I'll tell you what, standing with Alex Pereira takes a lot of guts, and nothing else. So you wonder about how Rountree is going to do. But it is no guarantee that Poatan comes out of that fight with a victory. But if he does, he is a big favorite. If he does come out of it, does it make sense for him to fight Dricus du Plessis for the middleweight championship in his bout after that? So we would have to imagine that he would be able to do that sometime probably February, March at the earliest range. If he fights October the 5th, you think he's probably not going to want to train for the holiday. So if he goes into training, sometime after Christmas, that would probably put him into the March timeframe. There's usually a UFC event in Las Vegas in March, so that might be where they look to bring Poatan back if he's able to defeat Khalil Rountree Jr. But that creates a lot of scenarios. After his win at UFC 303 over Jiri Prochazka, really for the first time ever, Poatan said, yes, I want to fight for the UFC heavyweight championship. Now, there's significance to that because no fighter has ever, and I repeat, ever held titles in 3 weight classes in the UFC. Because of how wide the weight classes are, unlike in boxing where in the lower weights they're only 4 pounds apart, and then they're 7 pounds apart for much of the higher weights, when you get to MMA, they're not like that. There are big gaps between the weight classes, so jumping up is really, really difficult. As an example, if you are the welterweight champion and you want to jump up to middleweight, that's a 15-pound jump, and then it's a 20-pound jump up to light heavyweight. So if you are a guy that's a welterweight and you want to be a 3-division champion, you're looking at a 30-pound rise in weight, and not too many fighters can do that. Now, Poatan, and Dana White has been warning Poatan, hey, you don't want to go up to heavyweight. These guys are different. You know, Poatan is a big guy. Pereira is 6'4". He's got an 80-inch reach, and he walks around between fights at 235, 240. That's around what heavyweight champion Jon Jones will come into the fight at about 245. Jones is, a 245, 250 pounder. A lot of the guys, though, are cutting weight in the heavyweight division to get to 265 in the UFC. So, he will be giving up weight, but he's going to have that speed advantage and he has that great striking. I think he could handle himself at heavyweight very well. Does he beat Jon Jones? Does he beat Tom Aspinall? That's another story, right? We could talk about that down the road. But I think he could compete at heavyweight if he chose to do that. However, he called middleweight, quote, my weight class. If he drops back down and fights once again at middleweight, I don't think he's ever going to heavyweight. That will be it, because you cannot go from 205 down to 185 and then go back up to heavyweight. The body just will not tolerate that. And think back, if you follow boxing closely like I do, a lot of you will remember that Roy Jones, I believe it was in 2003, won a version of the heavyweight championship. Now that was incredible what Jones was able to do, because he became the first former middleweight champion. And in boxing, middleweight is 160 pounds, remember, in over 100 years to win the heavyweight title when he defeated John Ruiz. It's not easy to do. But what did Jones do? He made a mistake, in my opinion, after he won the heavyweight title, because he went back to light heavyweight. Maybe what he should have done was campaigned at cruiserweight, which was a 200-pound limit. But he went from heavyweight, where he weighed in, I think he was 201 or 202. I don't have it in front of me, for the fight against John Ruiz. He went down to light heavyweight, which in boxing was 175. And he got knocked out by Antonio Tarver and by Glenn Johnson. And a big part of that was he had lost muscle mass, right? When you build up all that muscle and then you drop it, it hurts your body. It's very difficult to be the same kind of guy after you've added all that muscle and then you take it away. And I don't know that Poatan is going to be able to go from fighting at 205 down to 185. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, he beats Duplessis. And I don't think it's a guarantee by any stretch of the imagination, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, that he is able to do that. Can he now turn around and fight Jon Jones or Tom Aspinall, or if Stipe Miocic wins the belt, Stipe, can he do that? Is he going to be able to put on the 50 or 60 pounds? And I think, if he's 185, he's going to need to be 240 or so to successfully fight at heavyweight. I think if he's anywhere below 235, 240, he's not going to be big enough to really compete successfully in the heavyweight division. Aspinall is going to be around 260. Jones is going to be around 245, maybe even 250 as he builds his body and moves up there. And remember, Pereira is 37 years old. So he has taken a really big risk in not being able to take a shot at history if he drops back down and does what he said on Instagram and goes after the middleweight belt one more time. I understand why he wants to do it, and Du Plessis has done unbelievable work, and he's made himself into an attractive opponent, and that's why Pereira would like to fight him. He just beat Adesanya, who has a win over Pereira. So Pereira's taken notice of that, and he's saying, hey, Du Plessis is right at the top of the pound-for-pound rankings. I believe I have him ranked 6th. He's ranked as high as 3rd in some of the pound-for-pound rankings. So Du Plessis is a legitimate opponent for him. But if he does that, I think you're looking at him never again fighting at light. Excuse me, I don't know what that was. Fighting at heavyweight. So it's going to be up to Alex what he decides to do. I don't know that he was ever fully committed to being a heavyweight. You know, he mentioned it. There was a lot of pressure on him after UFC 300. He didn't really want to go there. But after UFC 303, I think he kind of felt the pressure. He knew what the public and the media wanted. And so he kind of talked about, hey, I want to take my shot at light heavyweight, or excuse me, at heavyweight. So if he goes to middleweight, though, I think that's a pretty good sign that we will not see Poatan ever challenge for that heavyweight strap. We will see what happens, but it's going to be very interesting. Always worth watching Alex Pereira, because he will surprise you with everything he does. I am Kevin Iole. I appreciate you joining me. If you can do me a big favor, please, please, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and tell a friend about my channel. I will have all sorts of content. I'm going to have a lot more coming up on UFC Noche, so appreciate whatever you can do to share this content, to get it in front of as many eyeballs as possible. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Enjoy the fights. We'll talk to you soon.